All right, so today we're going to talk about resilience in leadership because it really takes a resilient mindset to be a leader. And today I want us to talk about something that I've been hearing so much about. If you haven't tuned into my show before, my name is Joyce Odedison, and this is the Resilience Catalyst Show. And we're talking about something that everyone talks about at work, but we still just can't put a label on it. So I want to talk about something I've been hearing a lot in conversations, even this weekend in conversations as I connect with some of my friends and colleagues as leaders and they're like, what is going on? So here are some of the questions we're going to ask. Why do some leaders enforce the policy and others don't? Like, have you ever been in a workplace where there are some leaders, their teams working really well, everybody knows the rules, people follow the rules, everything works out fine, and then there's another set of leaders that, heavens, like, what is going on? Nobody follows the rules, nobody is paying attention, and then we have challenges, right? And we see a lot of conflict happening in those situations. And then I get called in, and often it's those, and I'm in that department and I'm interviewing, and the other departments, things are working really well. So let's talk about that resilience mindset because it's so important and it has a lot to do with why we're seeing those things. The other question I want us to also spend some time on is one employee why is one employee held accountable while another employee gets away with bending the rules? So it's three things that we see that we're going to look at. Why do some leaders enforce policies and others don't? Why is one employee held accountable while another gets away with bending the rules? And then the third one we're going to look at is why does it seem like leaders are picking favorites? Oh, I will tell you, I hear this every day of my 28 years working with organization. Well, they have a favorite, and we'll delve into that. Now, let's talk about it. I know that some people have preferences, but the truth is there's a difference between preferences and following the rules, right? The rules, as we talk about, is very, very important for us in what we're doing. When a leader is inconsistent, when they enforce some of the policies and ignore others, they create confusion, frustration, and resentment in the workplace. So I see a lot of confusion, resentment, and frustration. I hate that leader. I hate working for this person. It's frustrating when this person does XYZ. So it's important for us to pay attention to that as a leader and ask yourself, well, how does that impact? But let me share with you. So I've been doing my research and I have my reasons, right? And I have my propositions on what's happening. So I want you to know that this is actually happening and I've seen it. So let's talk about what's going on and what we're seeing. In this example, a policy says employees need to submit their timesheets in a certain way. And you, as a leader, you ignore that. You ignore that requirement and you say, ah, I can't be bothered. I don't have time, or it's not enough energy, or why are they bothering me, or why do we need to do that? Right? But what you don't think about when you don't have that resilience mindset is what messages are you sending? The same thing happens when you have a dress code in the workplace, but you allow one person to disregard it while the others have to comply. Why can we say, well, what this person gets away with murder? This person gets to bend the rules. This person get to wear that, and they never get told. But I get reprimanded. I get a letter in my file. So you're teaching people that rules don't matter, or worse, that the rules only apply to some people. That's what employees are inferring. You know, I think sometimes we forget how complicated humans are, right? Let's be honest. Managing people is one of the hardest job on the planet because people have brains and every brain is wired differently. People hear information differently, they interpret rules through their own mindset and through their own subjective lenses. So when you as a leader come and you decide to adhere to some rules, or you decide to let certain people get away with it, or it causes even more confusion. This is why it's so important for leaders to have that critical mindset and resilience, that really resilience, critical resilience mindset that gives you that opportunity that you can, like, I can bounce back. Because with a resilient mindset, leaders make decisions in isolation. They are making decision in isolation because they're not resilient. They act based on their feelings, they underestimate the ripple effect of their actions, and it causes a lot of conflict. With a resilience ecosystem, a leader is recognizing the impact, right? What do I mean by a resilient mindset for leaders? It's a resilient leader, someone who is agile, able to shift, and when the situation requires it, shift with it. Critical thinking, asking what is the real issue here? What are some of the consequences if I do act or if I don't act? It's almost sometimes I go in and I get told, like, this person is lazy. Is it that they're lazy or they're just not? They just don't know how to have a resilient mindset. Nobody has taught them how to think. Did you know thinking is a skill? Often when I'm teaching and I said thinking is a skill, not all of us learn how to think. Thinking is something we need to be taught. Thinking is something we need to learn. Thinking is something that we have to practice to get better at. And if we are not thinking, then nothing happens. We just do random things because there is no structure, there is no sequence to our thinking, there is no purpose to our thinking. We just, a thought coming to our head and we just, oh, okay. To be critically analyzing your thoughts and to have a resilience mindset. This is all part of leadership. People don't get promoted into leadership role because they have a critical thinking skill set. Very rarely. It's like, oh, people like them. Oh, they're good people. Well, seldom do I get the, like, they're good people. People skills, they have good people skills. That's usually last down in the bottom. It's like, oh, they get things done. They have a really good record. They have performed really well. So we're gonna make them a leader. How does that make one a good leader? It doesn't. We need to have different criterias for promoting people into leadership roles. Leaders need to have that, a resilient leader need to have that adaptive thinking mindset, recognizing when a policy no longer serves its purpose and knowing how to advocate for change. There are sometimes some policies make no sense and you're like, who came up with that policy? So you have two choices as a leader. You recognize that that policy is not in the best interest of your people you're leading. And you say, guys, this policy, I have some questions about it. I'm going to advocate for change. But in the meantime, we are going to do our best to comply because we want to send a message that we're serious about our work and we take working in this organization seriously. So we're sending that message, but I'm advocating. I am going to advocate. I'm going to show how it doesn't serve our team and what we need to do and how it can be adapted, how it can be changed to better accommodate the needs of my team. Now, if you say that to your team, what are the chances of them saying, I hate my workplace. What they're going to say is like, we are we are a resilient team. We're a resilient organization. When rules don't make sense, we fight and we advocate to change it. And it doesn't have to be an adversarial process, it can be a collaborative process. Too often, leaders are missing the ball, or they're just too tired, or too overwhelmed, or too burned out, or maybe just too darn lazy. If you have the privilege of leading people, I don't care if you're, you know, I was working with an organization, and they had several people who had the leadership role title, and they had no one. They were not supervising anyone. You know why? They said this person have really bad attitude and can't work with anyone. So why the hell are we calling them a leader? If you want to give them a bump up in pay, give them a bump up in pay for the work they're doing. But don't confuse that with leadership. Because, like, there was one time I was working, and one of those leader that's not leading anyone had such a bad rep in the organization that we were doing a training. I had the leaders all in training. And at 3:30 sharp, he wanted to leave. You know what he did? He pulled his desk, he dragged it over, he started putting his stuff, making noise, disturbing everyone else. Guess what their timeout was? 4 p.m. That was the time we were supposed to be done, right? At 3:30 on the dot, this guy started acting like a baby. And a baby in a dirty diaper, and they're screaming, I need to be changed. This was a so-called leader. And you know why he ended up with no one? Because all the people who were, they suffered through having to be supervised by him, ended up quitting. So we need that mindset to change. The mindset had to change. Because if the mindset isn't changing, and it shouldn't change after they become a leader, after you have people suffering under them. There are so many employees who are stressed out, resentful of their organization, and frustrated because we've subjected them with less than lackluster leaders. That should not be, right? Leaders who are resilient, they are saying, we're going to enforce this policy, we're going to stay consistent. Often those who are enforcing the policies, they get a bad rap because people are saying, they're hard to deal with, right? They're seen as strict and rigid. Meanwhile, the leaders who are checked out, too weak, or simply don't care, they get away with looking like the nice ones. So the system has to change. How do we qualify someone to be a leader? What are the skill set they need to show up with? How do they need to behave? How do they need to treat their staff? All of that. They should be evaluated on, and they should be given training on how to do it well. Because sometimes we wait until people fall on their face before we say, oh, you need training. Well, what about all the suffering that's caused before you clued in that they need proper training, right? We have to think about that. There's too many collateral damages in the workplace. In reality, inconsistent leadership is one of the biggest resilience issues in the workplace. Because in a resilience ecosystem, which is the whole concept that I've been pushing and educating and teaching on, is that every leader understands that every action has a consequence in the workplace. Every decision ripples through the team. And you cannot act in isolation. Your choices shape the resilience of your team and your organization. So you don't get away with being a leader who cannot be agile and think critically. You don't get away with that because the impact is there. And when you are in a resilience ecosystem, when you're working to get resilience as a cornerstone of your team and your organization, you understand that there are impacts. When leaders forget this, they send mixed signals. They start to send mixed messages. People are confused. They're not quite sure what's happening. Employees start interpreting the rules their own way, and suddenly you don't have any consistency. You don't have fairness. You have confusion, disengagement, and mistrust. Because that's what you're working to develop. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If what you're doing is out of integrity, it's inconsistent, well, those are the seeds you're sowing. So naturally, you're going to have mistrust, disengagement, and confusion. That's just the reality. Don't expect to get something more different from what you're sowing. Because if you plant oranges, you get oranges. If you plant apples, you get apples. I'm not going to plant a cherry tree and expect apple. It doesn't work that way. So my message today is really, if you're a leader, your resilience mindset matters. It matters to you. It matters to your team. It matters to your entire organization. And I will continue preaching this sermon because my goal is to help a billion people RX their lives. In the workplace, I do this by working with leaders to help leaders to get their employees to understand their resilience index, the impact on their well-being and on their success as leaders. And for employees, how to work, live, and play better. Understanding your resilience index is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. It's not about bouncing back. Resilience isn't, people, sometimes we think that, oh, resilience is only for when I lost, touch, or I fall off the wagon, or, it's about bouncing back. It's not just about bouncing back from challenges. It's about showing up consistently, making thoughtful decisions. Earlier I talked about thinking is a skill, being able to think and to recognize that every choice you make builds or breaks the trust and the resilience of your team. Because at the end of the day, leadership is not about being light. It's about being resilient enough to be fair, to be consistent, trustworthy, and yes, even when it's hard. This is what that resilience mindset is. Because do we look at it and say it's hard, I'm not going to do it, it's too much work? Or we say, well, let me do the parts that I can do right now and build up the resilience to continue and to move forward until I've done it all. Because you've ever done something and you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure I can do that. And you start and then you're like, oh, I did that. Okay, let me do this too. And before you know it, you're finished. The stuff that seems so hard. That's what happens with a resilience mindset. Because we're like, it's tough. Like, you have to tell people what to do. You have to hold them accountable to the rules. You have to be understanding. You still want to be a nice guy. You still want to follow through. But you can be both. So how do I do? What takes resilience to find that middle ground, to walk that fine line. And you have to first have a resilient mindset to say, I can do this. I just need to focus. And as a leader, my impact is a lot more and farther than if it's just me. As a leader, everyone I lead is impacted by my choices and my actions and the consequences. They have to live with it. So I am going to make better decisions. I am going to adopt a more resilient mindset. That's today's teaching on resilience, folks. It's for leaders. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have experienced a leader who was inconsistent with policies, favoritism, how did that affect you as a team member, as a leader, as a colleague? How did it affect you? Let's continue the conversation after this episode ends, and let's talk about how that affects you, your mindset. Because if you have a resilient mindset in leader, you're going to end up adopting one. But if you don't, you're less likely to. So I want to encourage you, share your thoughts. Let me know what you're seeing, what's impacting you, And how are you making changes in your workplace to build resilience? This is Joyce Adelson here, coming to you from the Resilience Catalyst Show. I'm so excited that you tune in today. Stay connected, leave your comments, leave your questions. And I am taking questions for my Ask Me Anything, where I will be dealing with some of the most troubling situations that we've worked on and giving you tips and strategies on how we address those. Thanks for being here. Leave a comment. Thank you, Samuel, for tuning in. And let's stay resilient in our mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye now.